Security's webinar, VIPRE, the antivirus that doesn't slow you down. In today's presentation, Gil Langston, Director of Product Management for ThreatTrack Security, will discuss and demonstrate how VIPRE Business Premium can bolster your organization's malware defense. Now I will hand today's presentation over to Gil.
Thank you so much, Dana. Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining me. As she said, my name is Gil Langston. I'm the Director of Product Management for VIPRE Business here at ThreatTrack Security. And thanks a lot for joining us to talk a little bit about how VIPRE Business can help protect your organization. You know, of course, the most important thing is safe computing. You know, no business can operate without that threat protection on their endpoints. But one of the concerns that we always focus on is making sure that it doesn't get in the way of the work that needs to be done, and it's not too intrusive to an IT department. You know, one of the mantras I always go by is you really shouldn't have an antivirus administrator on your business card. You have a lot of different hats that you wear. We're always juggling a lot of different things in the IT industry, and having to spend all day deploying and managing your endpoint security solution is just not effective. So here at ThreatTrack, we focus on ease of use, the small footprint, not getting in the way, and letting you know the things that are important, keeping you protected. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to let you know a little bit about who we are, what exactly is VIPRE Business Premium, kind of our unique approach to protection from threats, viruses, malware, all the things that are out there, and then I'm going to show you in the console a little bit about how we have set it up so that you can manage your security solution, and then we're going to go ahead and take some questions there at the end. So, what is, excuse me, who we are here at ThreatTrack? You know, we have one main goal and one job, and that is to help eliminate threats that put your business at risk. It is the sole reason for our existence. It's why we have researchers. It's why we have so many developers focused on making sure that these endpoints are safe and protected. Now, a little bit about us. Our story actually starts about 20 years ago. We were originally established in 1994 as Sunbelt Software, and Sunbelt Software evolved the business model to create security solutions for this growing Windows user base, right? I mean, Windows was the operating system everybody used. We had successful products, I Hate Spam, Counter-Spy, and we created Threat Analyzer. Threat Analyzer is actually our dynamic malware analysis sandbox. A lot of the cybersecurity infrastructure in the U.S. actually uses this to analyze malware. It's also a tool that we use to analyze malware. And then our anti-spyware, anti-malware expertise culminated in the launch of VIPRE Antivirus in 2008. We're defending more than 4 million endpoints globally just within VIPRE Business. Now, then Sunbelt was acquired by GFI Software in 2010. We continue the development and growth of our security solutions portfolio. There are many improvements introduced into VIPRE. We have VIPRE Mobile. We have patch management, mobile device management within VIPRE Business as well. And then we developed and productized, if you will, the threat intelligence. We've been gaining all of this threat intelligence from our research and created Threat IQ. And that Threat IQ feed is also sold to other vendors and businesses who use that in their defense strategy. Now, GFI had a focus on small and medium business. GFI Software did. So we reestablished ThreatTrack Security as an independent company so we can focus exclusively on developing these high-end anti-malware solutions for businesses of all different sizes, focused on the enterprise. To make sure that we are focused on that advanced threat protection. So the threats don't really care where you are. So ThreatTrack Security has a global community. We have offices in the U.S., in Spain, the Philippines, and Australia. This allows us to analyze malware and remediate threats around the clock, if you will. And we do have that global presence with offices in Clearwater, Florida, Reston, Virginia, New York, and the Philippines. And we have a large group of active partners throughout the world. Now, these are some of the customers that ThreatTrack Security works with in both our VIPRE Business and also some of our advanced threat offerings to give you an idea of the wide range of customers that we do have. Now, let's talk a little bit about VIPRE Business Premium, which is why you're all here today. And we're going to take a look at why we built a VIPRE Business Premium, a little bit about our focus, and then we'll go ahead and get right into that demonstration that I'm sure you're here to see. As you can see, VIPRE Business Premium is a centrally managed small footprint antivirus protection for a majority of the devices that are used in computing and in business today. Earlier I mentioned that we started focusing on Windows, but of course now a network, a business, an environment has many different types of devices out there. So we've expanded our coverage to make sure that we can offer security for the devices that are in use and are prevalent out in the world, if you will. It also includes patch management, malicious website blocking, and a two-way firewall, because just antivirus isn't necessarily enough anymore to make sure that you're fully protected. This requires a layered approach, a multifaceted approach to make sure that you're secure. And VIPRE Antivirus Protection, the core, if you will, of VIPRE Business Premium, was engineered from the ground up for high performance, because we know one of the concerns is that there are a lot of situations where you install endpoint security on your endpoints there, and a scan runs and it slows things down. That generates calls to the help desk. You have to go investigate, figure out what's going on. So we focus solely on making sure we have a low footprint and we don't get in the way of people doing their work. Now, that means we have one powerful engine that was built for all the different types of malware, all the bad stuff, if you will. You know, it's not just viruses, it's not just Trojans. There's all types of unwanted software that can cause security issues for your environment or bring down machines. So we make sure that this one engine looks for all the different types of threats that are out there. And of course, we're certified by the testing organizations and certification houses to make sure that we're in compliance with what we need to do to make sure that you're protected. Now, as I mentioned, we focus solely on the small footprint, but also giving you the features you need, but not that bloat, right? That's a term that people use a lot for their endpoint security software. We make sure we focus on low RAM and CPU usage. That means that your PCs actually run like they're supposed to versus slowing down. Now, one of the things that's really important to note here is that we have multiple types of protection to make sure that we're looking for threats out there. Of course, everyone does the signatures, right? The standard snapshot, look for this file. If you see it, it's bad. But we also have heuristics and MXV, or MX virtualization, that allows us to analyze files and behavior of files so that we can identify or classify them as being in a certain family and go ahead and block those to make sure you stay protected, so it's proactive. Now I want to show you some of the agents. We have a simple interface that's easy to use. This is the Windows interface for an agent. We also have agents for Mac, Android, and iOS devices. Now I'm going to show you some of the features and configurations that you can set up there, but let's talk a little bit about mobile device management. So now mobile devices are prevalent in every organization. And in fact, a lot of people will use them to answer emails most of the day as they walk around the office, as they're in meetings, et cetera, when they're away from the office. So it's important to make sure that all of those devices are under management. You know what's going on there. So we've set up our mobile device management so that it can be managed from the same console as your antivirus and endpoint security. We can cover Android, smartphones, and tablets. And we all know that there are more Android threats out there every day. So we have antivirus that can scan the device and make sure the apps that you're using are safe. You can also remotely locate, sound an alarm, go ahead and wipe a device if the device is lost or stolen. Now on iPhones and iPads, these iDevices, you can set or require passcode parameters. You can set wireless network configurations, so when someone walks into the office and you've changed the passcode, once you do that, it just automatically connects. So it's a point of convenience, and you don't have to send that password in an email, which is very unsecure. And you can also remotely lock and wipe those iDevices. Now, I had mentioned earlier patch management. I'm sure that a lot of you see out there in the press that these third-party applications, right, Adobe, Java, browsers, tend to be the most vulnerable these days. For a long time, people went after exploiting Windows, but they got really good at patching things very quickly. So the focus turned on all of these different third-party applications, and they actually account for over 70% of the infections by exploiting one of these applications. So we focused on making sure that we can help you keep those third-party applications that you're running, that you're required to use for your business, patched and up to date so that the bad stuff essentially can't exploit any of those vulnerabilities that are within that software. But there's some other premium features that are important to note as well. You know, one of the ways that someone can access a piece of malware from your network by mistake is to click on a link to a website that then serves up that malware, a drive-by download, or a actual known good site that's been infected by a hacker or somebody. So what we do in our research, of course, is we know the websites that a lot of this malware comes from or where it might go once you're infected to pull down more malware. So we maintain a list of known bad websites with this data feed that's constantly coming down in our definitions. That means that we can prevent someone from accessing the website. Why wait until they've downloaded the malware? Let's go ahead and stop that malware from being downloaded. So it's not really content filtering, but it's known bad or malicious websites. We also do have anti-phishing using that same list within email so that that way that people can be protected from clicking on those phishing links. And we do offer a desktop firewall that includes HIPS and intrusion detection rules to help keep those machines protected. And something that we added in the last version is Hyper-V support. So a lot of people are moving to virtualization these days, and Microsoft offers Hyper-V included in server licensing. So it's very easy to get into virtualization. So what we did is integrate antivirus into Hyper-V, into that hypervisor. The idea is that you can install an agent on that host machine, and once you get this set up and you protect the VMs, you can scan all of the guest VMs on the host through the hypervisor. It won't bog down the server. There a lot of times maybe you have several VMs or guests on a host, and if they all run scans at the same time, then it can bog down that machine and make it unresponsive. Well, the way this is designed, we actually have workload management, so we never would consume too much resources and go ahead and scan all those machines in sequence, if you will, so that they're protected. This gives you faster scan time, and you get even better resource gains this way. Now, we do license per host machine with Hyper-V. When you purchase a license for VIPRE Business, it is essentially per endpoint. The only difference to that is the licensing for the Hyper-V. You would license per host machine instead of individual VMs, and we have a couple of levels of licensing, but it is an add-on. Now, earlier I mentioned our researchers, and VIPRE actually leverages several different tools and sets that we utilize, and we also sell to other vendors. But of course, we have our ThreatTrack Security Labs. We have researchers. They're experts in malware analysis that are out there finding the newest threats and making sure that those get into our definitions. And I'd like to add also that we have the ability to release definitions as many as 16 times a day to make sure that we're on top of any new threats that come out there. I had mentioned Threat Analyzer earlier. This is an automated malware analysis tool that gives us a lot of information about the behavior of a suspected piece of malware so that we can then use that information to create our definitions and heuristics and other detections as well. And we do have cooperative arrangements with other security companies. We participate in VirusTotal so that the entire industry can help keep people protected. Now, what I want to do is take a minute here and pull up my server, and we're going to show you the console itself. Now, what you're looking at here is the VIPRE Business Premium console. Now, you can install this on a server, and there are two components that are installed. There's the site service itself, and then there's the console. Now, we do it this way because you might want to install a console on your workstation and connect to that remote site service so you can manage it from your workstation. We give you that flexibility. Now, once you have this installed, there are a couple of things you should note. You'll see on the left side that we do have policies, and we have them by policy type broken down in the Site Navigator. Now, I call it a Site Navigator because you can add multiple sites to this one console and actually manage them from one location. So it makes it very easy, regardless of the size of your organization or location of your offices, to configure VIPRE Business Premium to give you full visibility into all of your endpoints. Now, before I go into the individual policies, I want to show you some of the site properties. Of course, we do have unprotected computer discovery. This is a way for you to find out which machines are not protected today by VIPRE Business in your environment. You can turn that off if you needed to for some reason if you didn't want it on, but you can select individual domains that we cover, and we'll show you all the machines that need to have VIPRE Business installed. So you can also see here that we have two flavors, if you will, of VIPRE Business. There's VIPRE Business and VIPRE Business Premium. We do give you the ability to deploy standard VIPRE Business agents in the Premium console as well if you need to. Now, agent installation, I can supply credentials here within the site properties so that whenever we do try to deploy to a machine, we can use the credentials that are listed here so that we have access to install on those machines. You can enable automatic agent installation. I'll show you where the scopes are for this later if you'd like, so that anytime a new machine appears on the network, it can have an agent automatically installed to it. You can also see the current versions of our software that are available as far as the endpoint agents. You can configure automatic updates, so you can have the VIPRE Business Premium console pull down the definitions and agent software and have them ready to go to serve up to the agents. You can specify individual times you'd like to have these updates pulled down or just an interval. And you can also always manually check for either definitions or agents whenever you need to. We have alerts that we send you about important information, threats discovered, things like that. Now, you can set up email server settings here so that you can receive those emails. You should note, though, if for some reason your server goes down or you have issues, or maybe you simply just can't configure VIPRE Business to connect to your SMTP server, we actually have a system in the background that will do that for you. So if there's nothing set up here and we need to send you an email alert, we have servers that will take that alert and make sure that it gets to you. Now, there are a couple other things I want to show you. You can actually set up individual users to have different levels of access within the console. Maybe you want to give somebody read-only access or read-write access to only certain policies. So we give you a lot of granularity so you can configure that console security. Let's go ahead and take a look now, though, at some of the dashboards that are available. I'm on the top, clicked on the site name, and you'll see that a dashboard loads here. It shows you some of the important information about licensing, about some of the systems. And you can see you have a simple red, yellow, green type setup. If you have anything that is showing red, I can actually click on that link. It will take me right to the policy and show me what needs attention. So I'll actually go into a policy and show you that here in a minute. But these are widgets. These widgets can be moved around. You can add widgets if you'd like. You can customize this screen any way you'd like. You can go to Configure Dashboard and add and remove widgets based on what you would like to see and what's important to you. So now you can also view the quarantine from a global perspective here when I'm at the site level. So you can see items that have been quarantined, and you can right-click on that item. You can actually get details about that particular threat, when it was discovered, where it was discovered. You can see scan history and when that happened, when it made it to this quarantine. But you can also do things like go ahead and delete the item. You can unquarantine it. You can also unquarantine it and send it to us for analysis. Maybe you think it shouldn't be tagged as malware, and we'll take a look at that. You can also choose to allow that threat. That would be for, let's say you have an application that's being flagged for some reason. You want to allow it. You can go ahead and do that directly from the quarantine. So it's a centrally managed quarantine. Now I'm going to go down into some of the policies. We do have several types of Windows policies available, and you'll notice that we have some templates listed here. The idea is we've started some of that configuration. There are things like exclusions, places that Microsoft tells you not to scan within Windows. for example, SQL Server, databases, things like that. So we have some of that already pre-configured here. You can actually use these templates to build your own policies by copying a template to a policy and then modifying it any way you like. Now, one of the things I'm going to do here in a moment is show you some of the policy options, but I'd like to show you the Unprotected Computers tab that we talked about earlier. You'll see here that there are machines that at this time do not have a VIPRE agent on them, and you have the ability to click Install Now. You can even just drag them into a policy, and that will initiate the push deployment directly from the VIPRE Business Premium server. You can see information about what computer type they are. You'll see this H here. That means it's actually a Hyper-V host, and it gives you information about being able to install a Hyper-V host agent onto that machine if you would like. Or you can push a regular agent to the host as well, which I recommend because the host agent scans the guests, not the host. Now, there's a Protected Computers tab where once you've deployed, you will see information about those computers. And if I want to sort anything in this grid to see certain information, I can drag the policy, for example, header up, and now I'm sorted by that particular header. So it makes it very easy for me to see what's important, drag them back. That way I can focus on what I need to pay attention to, maybe show me machines that don't have the most current defs, and I can actually force a def update on those machines. Now, from this particular dashboard, I can right-click, and you see that I have the ability to ask it to say hello, check for a policy update, remotely restart that agent or that machine. I can also force it to check for agent upgrades, threat definition updates, etc. I can get details about the agent. I can kick off a patch management scan. I can move it to another policy, even remove the agent from here as well. So a lot of flexibility directly from the dashboard. I can multiple select machines if I'd like and perform these operations against multiple machines. Now, when I go into the policy level, you have the same dashboard available, but of course only the machines that live in this particular policy are now shown. So you can get a little more granular, drill down. Now, the other options available in that dashboard is a summary of patch management. How many machines are patched, how many are unpatched, and you'll see if a machine got a piece of malware on it and we block that, we'll tell you about that machine and say it's missing patches. So that can let you know, well, maybe I need to go ahead and get this thing up to date so I'm not at risk of an infection. I can view the quarantine, and now you'll see essentially items in the quarantine that apply to that policy. I can see any pending agent installations that haven't installed yet, and I can also see a history of agent installs. So you can see exactly what happened, the success, how that agent got there. Now let's go ahead and drill into a policy so I can show you some of the options that are available. Okay, so we define a policy as essentially the group of settings that would apply to any machine that lives within that policy. It's that simple, so that you can configure all of your settings. You could do it by department or user personas, however you'd like to do that, and then move all of those machines into that policy, and those settings all apply, of course. Now, we have the ability to hide, if you will, the toolbar so an agent, or excuse me, a user doesn't know that the agent is there. You can also, if you'd like, allow the user to run scans, allow them to manage the scan schedules, just knowing that if you do so, you give up the right, of course, as the administrator to control the scan schedule because you're essentially handing that control over to an end user. So you can control how an end user can interact. You can even hide it from the installed programs list so that you don't see it in your add remove program. We do have user prompts that are shown to the user. There are balloon messages like VIPRE started a scan, we've completed a scan. You could actually hide those if you wish. There's one prompt that we don't hide, and that is if a reboot is required. We have the ability to remove existing antivirus that is on the machines during our deployment, and a lot of times a reboot is required to get that done. There are also reboots required after install to make sure all the drivers are engaged in the firewall. So that is a prompt we always show. Or if we need to clean threat and the reboot's required to do that properly to unhook things, we'll pop that up. And you can also choose to automatically reboot the machine if no one replies in X amount of time, so that you can go ahead and make sure it's protected, and you can customize that message any way you'd like. Now, during the installation, you can choose to have VIPRE disable Windows Defender, also integrate into the Windows Security Center so it reports itself as an antivirus antivirus program that is enabled and running, so you don't get those little annoying pop-ups. I can decide how often, or excuse me, not how often, but what throttling I apply to those updates. Now, a little bit about updates. We do a full update every morning, and then we do incremental updates throughout the day. So the incremental updates are very small. But if you'd like to throttle that full update, you can choose how long we wait in between each chunk to send the next chunk so that you can control that bandwidth usage. You can control how often the agents within this policy check for updates. And for machines that are off network, you can even choose to have the agents download via the internet straight to ThreatTrack Security so we can supply those to your agents. You can also, if you wish, have the agents check for software updates, in other words, an update of the agent, and have those automatically download if you wish as well. Now, the agents heartbeat back to the VIPRE Business Server every 5 minutes by default. You can modify that if you'd like. They check in to see if there are any new policy changes or any instructions, and also report their status. Now, you can also have agents that have not communicated with the server in X amount of days automatically removed from the agent catalog. That kind of helps manage your licensing, if you will, so that you don't have old agents living in the console when they've been decommissioned for whatever reason. Now, you'll see that we have a policy server and an update server. The reason we do that is because you can actually install another installation of VIPRE Business onto a machine and specify that to be the update server. Maybe you want something more local to some of the agents in a large network. So you can actually specify a different server to serve up the policy information and do management than you have for getting updates. We also do have proxy settings if you have to go through a proxy, and you have wake from sleep for a scheduled scan, and also laptop power save mode available. Now let's get into some of the scanning information. So under the settings there, you can actually allow users to right-click on a file and have VIPRE scan that. You can have VIPRE scan a USB drive whenever it's plugged in. And you can also randomize your scheduled scan start times if you'd like. Now, we have two different types of scans. You'll see them identified as a deep scan and a quick scan. Really, it's a naming thing and the settings, the default settings configured there. So this deep scan, I can decide when it starts. I can decide how often it runs, its priority level, and what locations that I would like to be scanned. The quick scan, of course, I can do the same. You'll see here that we just have common threat locations and certain things being scanned. So you can actually have deep scans run at certain times, and the quick scan run every day in the afternoon if you wish. It's very flexible as far as how you would like to have those run. Now, we all know that people don't get infected when a scan's running only, so we have active protection, of course. That active protection is always on and always watching. And we have several different levels that you can set your active protection to. You can wait until a file tries to execute or run, so something like a file server or something like that, you might set to execution only. The middle setting is for high-risk extensions, and you can specify those extensions. So every time one of those files is touched, we would take a look at it. And you can go to all touched files if you wish to, but we only recommend that when you suspect an outbreak. Now, we do also offer email protection. You can enable that, enable anti-phishing as well, and you can choose which type of email client you're using. Now, on the remediation side, you'll see that we break down the actions for different types of known threats that are out there. Now, when we first install, we're set up to quarantine most threats. There is one exception to that, and that is commercial remote control tools. We report only because you probably don't want us pulling off your support tool once you run a scan. So this lets you decide what you have on the machines, and then you can actually create exceptions or allowed threats to make sure that your remote control tool isn't flagged anymore as a possible threat. So I can choose per type what I want VIPRE to do. Now, we'll always try to clean, but this is the secondary action. If for some reason it's something that isn't simply cleanable, just needs to be quarantined, we'll go ahead and take that secondary action. Now, I can set up exceptions. I can choose to always block a file with path, or a folder. So if I don't want iTunes.exe to ever run, I can put that in my list, and it will not be allowed to run. I can also set up exclusions. You'll see that we do have some pre-configured exclusions in our templates there for your standard, Exchange, etc. So you don't have to go configure all those. Now, we do have email alerts, and you can set those up for Scanning, so if something's caught during a scan and I can choose what level and higher of severity I get an alert for. I can choose to get an email whenever active protection blocks something, and I can choose to get an alert whenever email protection catches something. Now, I mentioned allowed threats earlier. You'll see I have some of those remote control tools listed so that VIPRE Business Premium will ignore those when it discovers them because maybe you use this version of VNC and you don't want it being flagged. Now, I had mentioned web filtering earlier. We do have the ability to block websites. We will block known bad websites automatically. You can put in your own domains if you wish to always block a certain domain. And if for some reason we're blocking something as known bad and you believe it's good, you can override by adding in an allowed website. Now, we do have a bidirectional firewall here that gives you basic firewall protection. I can create application exceptions, network exceptions, and advanced exceptions. You'll see we have most of those standard protocols already configured, so you don't have to start from scratch. Under advanced firewall protection, we can prevent code injection into a process. So that makes it a little bit easier, and of course you can allow certain code injectors. I mean, you think about Outlook or Chrome or something like that, you might want to add that because they do inject into processes from time to time. Now, I mentioned patch management earlier. I can actually go in and see per policy what patches are needed, which ones are up to date and out of date. And I can actually, for example, when we install, we do not update Java automatically. I'm sure a lot of you know what happens to an application that requires a certain version of Java and you update it. So we don't check that one by default. We let you make the decision. But you can actually choose to automate the process so that the scans and the deployment of patches happens automatically. Or you can choose to maybe automate the scan, but then make your decisions about what you want to deploy and then push them out yourself. So you have full granular control. And if you'd like, you can force Windows updates to be turned on the endpoints. We do not update Microsoft Windows applications. We do third-party applications only, but you can force that Windows update on an endpoint to be turned on. I can decide when the scan happens and when the installation happens if I want to do that automatically, or I could just do it manually. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier was incompatible software is what we call it, but it's essentially being able to remove existing antivirus applications during our deployment. We show you a list of what we can remove. You can also open a case with support. If we don't have your application in the list, we can create the removal tool for you. So during the deployment, we remove the other antivirus so there's no conflicts. After a reboot, you're clean, and then our installation completes. I can also choose within each installation management setting within the policy, which AD, OU I might want to deploy to, a machine list, IP range, so that if a new computer ever appears within that scope, it would automatically have an agent deployed to it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and switch now to show you some other items. You'll see the Hyper-V policies. As I mentioned before, we have the ability to protect those VMs through the hypervisor. You'll see I have an unprotected computers tab here. I can click protect on any of these, and then they will be scanned using the Hyper-V agent that I can install on that host operating system. Once I'm in, I can actually set my policy properties there. I can decide at what time the scan starts. You can, if you wish, deploy an active protection agent to each VM. I can set up my exceptions and allowed threats, of course, but I can decide how often the scans occur. Now, once I've done a full scan, I can set up incremental scans. This makes things very quick because we'll only scan things that have not yet been scanned, so new items. I can create multiple policies there as well. I can push an agent, or excuse me, I cannot push an agent. I can generate an installer for a Mac machine, deploy that on the Mac, and then I can it will show up here, and of course I can control the scan times. Now, we do scanning on the Macs. Now, one of the things that's important to note is that while there aren't a lot of Mac threats out there, there are some, and we do obviously have definitions for those. Another concern would be somebody downloading a PDF that has an exploit for a Windows machine, and then they send it over to that person. So we actually scan for Windows threats like that on the Mac as well to make sure that the environment is clean. I can configure scanning, remediation, exceptions, email alerts, and allowed threats for Mac. Now, in Android, I can set up scanning and decide when I'd like scanning to happen. I can also decide, do I want a daily or weekly scan on that machine, so we'll look for malware on the Android devices. Now, within Android as well, there are some features available here. You'll see first, let me show you, add and install agent. I'm going to get an activation code. Now, when I get the activation code, I can actually send instructions to the users. They can download the business mobile security agent from the Play Store in this case, put in the code and their name, and then they appear here within the console. Once that happens, I have the ability to go in and let's click on the lost device section. I can sound an alarm, wipe the device if I need to, get the location, and I get a nice little Google map showing exactly where the device is. I can see scan history, last scan summary, information about this particular, you'll see my device here, what version it's running, etc. Now the same applies here within iOS. Now there's a little different set of features here, but I can choose to lock the device or wipe the device, and I can see information about this iOS device. Now we have some new features coming in the next version I'll talk about in a moment. But you can protect all of these different device types here within one console. Now I had showed you earlier the dashboard, where you can see basic information. I can also, here under any individual policy, you can easily right-click and print, email, export what you see here in a grid. But we also have a report generator that I'm going to show you in just a moment. Now, I had mentioned earlier that you have the ability to install agents multiple ways. You can push to a machine. You can generate an MSI installer if you'd wish that you can carry to machines and install or share somewhere. So we make it very flexible, and under agent installation here, you can see MSI, MST, EXE, the Hyper-V installer package, or whatever you need there. Now let me show you that report generator for a moment. This report generator will allow you to create reports based on policies, if you wish, or individual groups of machines, however you'd like those to run. I can see things like an executive summary that essentially will show me, a couple of pages, charts and graphs about some of the high-level information needed. I can also run detailed reports about machines that have been infected and had to be cleaned by VIPRE. Some threats were discovered. I can also see missing patches, detail and summary, patch management summary, what was deployed. We also have a top 25 biggest offenders report that shows the machines that have had to be cleaned the most by VIPRE. Things were blocked. So this will allow you to then identify who you might need to give some extra training to for security within your environment. Now, a couple of other things to note. I can schedule any report to run and be delivered. I can choose, in this case, how often it's run, who it's delivered to, what the output format is, PDF, Excel, HTML, PNG, and then also save it to disk, send it as an email attachment to whomever I prefer. So you have a lot of flexibility in who these reports go to depending on what somebody's area of responsibility is. Now, if you give me a moment here, I'm going to switch back over. Now, somebody had asked earlier, I believe, in the question, so what's the difference between your VIPRE Antivirus Business and your VIPRE Business Premium? So I wanted to give you a comparison here. You'll see that in both versions you get your antivirus, anti-spyware, low footprint, ability to access or on-access scan files, removable device scanning, the mobile device management, Mac, email security. Now, what is in the premium version is patch management that we talked about, your anti-phishing, firewall, and the known bad website blocking. If you want that full protection, the layers of security, VIPRE Business Premium can give you all of those layers. Now, I want to let you know also what we have in the works for VIPRE Business. There are some new features that are coming soon in VIPRE Business 7.0. It's currently in beta. With a release set for the end of September. So we're implementing VIPRE roaming service. So here at ThreatTrack, we have cloud-based servers that will allow your site server to communicate with agents that are out in the wild. Maybe they're not in your office, cannot contact the console. Well, we have these cloud servers that will allow that VSS or that VIPRE site service to talk to the agents that are out there, get information back from them so they can be managed without you having to set up any firewall configurations and make sure they can talk back through the firewall. It just works. We are also creating a remote installer, roaming installer, if you will. So if you have an office that doesn't have a VIPRE server, maybe it has 5 machines, but you want to manage it, you can install that roaming installer in that remote office, and those agents will call back to your server through our roaming service. So it allows machines to stay under management even when they're not in contact directly with your VIPRE server. We're improving the unprotected computer discovery for sites with multiple servers. We're setting up a concept of automatic policy assignment. So when VIPRE deploys to a machine, it knows whether it's a server, workstation, laptop, and can essentially apply the right template, if you will, right off the bat. So it makes for a quicker deployment experience. We're adding some features in mobile device management to both device types there, so you'll be able to configure Wi-Fi configuration in Android just like you can in iOS. You'll be able to do the remote passcode requirements and lock and wipe in iOS like you can in Android. You'll be able to prevent agent uninstallation with password protection. We're going to create a new agent installation wizard to simplify the deployment. As I mentioned, that's currently in beta. You're welcome to check that out if you'd like. But what I am going to do is, if you'll give me a moment, I'm going to show you. Here we are. You'll notice, too, there's a new VIPRE logo. But one of the things I do want to show you is now under Site Properties, you'll see Roaming Agent Installation. Once you allow this, if you generate a roaming installer, you'll be able to see information about that installer. I can control or change the amount of allowed installations on that installer. So for example, if you believe an installer got into the wrong hands and somebody's going to try to install it and show up in your console, you can actually deactivate those as well. So we kind of give you some security around that. You know how many have been installed remotely. I can put a limit on those and say, okay, only allow 10 installs with this installer. And as I mentioned before, things change a little bit in VIPRE Business 7 when it comes to templates. We're going to do away with the actual templates themselves and convert those to policies. But now you have default for laptop, default for server, default for workstation. And within the site properties, go back in, you'll see auto policy assignment. I can choose for workstations, laptops, or servers which policy is assigned based on that type of machine. So it makes life a little easier. You can just deploy and they will be put into whichever policy is listed here unless you specify otherwise during a deployment. So there are a couple of things that I thought that would be interesting. Let me show you here in the properties. You'll see now that you have a roaming agents section, and these are computers not directly connected to the network. I can allow the agent to roam and then decide how often it contacts the roaming service to pass its information back to the console and how often any changes you make in a policy would be applied to those machines. So this makes things a lot easier. Now, one other thing I did mention is the ability to install agents. We now have a wizard. You can choose which device type you're deploying to. And once you've done that, you can then choose the policy that applies. You can then choose what type of installation, push installation, roaming installation, or just create an MSI package, for example. It gives you the details, tells you where it's going to drop the installer, and then you're done. So it's a simple, straightforward deployment wizard that makes things easier for you. So I want to thank everybody for joining me to take a look at how VIPRE Business Premium can help protect your environment and keep computing safe. Now, what I do want to do, though, is check the questions for a moment and see if there are any questions that need to be answered. Here's a good question. If there is no server, can management be performed from a workstation? Absolutely. So our VIPRE site service and console are very lightweight, and they can be deployed on workstation operating systems instead of a server. The caveat, of course, is to remember that the workstations only allow so many connections back to them. So if you have a high volume of agents, you might want to think about a server installation. But you know, when you're dealing with a smaller office, you can certainly install the management console on a workstation operating system. Now here's a question that was typed in earlier. Can I have multiple sites and manage them from one location? The answer to that is absolutely. I mentioned the site manager earlier, and you'll see there are a couple of different ways. I can open the site manager, and I can add individual sites. I can decide what port they use to communicate over, so I can actually connect all of those sites to this one console. So that makes management of organizations where you have several servers installed easy, because all of those sites would then show in your configuration. Here's a question. Do you offer control of USB ports and devices? That's actually a really good question. So today we do not. We do scan removable devices to make sure they're safe from threats, but we are working on and have in the roadmap the ability for you to control access to removable devices so that you can keep those protected, make sure that you don't have data leaving your or bad things coming back into the organization. Here's a great question too. Someone is using VIPRE Business, and they want to know if they can upgrade to the premium version. The answer to that is absolutely. You can contact your reseller that you purchased VIPRE Business from, or you can contact us here at ThreatTrack Security, and there is an upgrade that you can do, and then you can install and upgrade the premium version to get access to the new protection features that you're going to get there. So absolutely. So it looks like I have gone over a few minutes. I apologize for that. But again, I do want to thank everybody for staying to see how we can help protect your environment. If you do have any questions, please feel free to contact your reseller or us here at ThreatTrack Security. You can go to ThreatTrackSecurity.com to find more information about VIPRE Business Premium, and we're always glad to help answer any other questions that you might have. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end our presentation. Thank everyone for joining, and I hope you have a great day.